Hi guys, this is the final setup because we couldn't get into the CCGX, the color control GX before, but we have reset the password and rebooted it, and now we can get in. So I am now going to show you the final bit. Here we go. So I'm into GX. I'll push escape so we can go from the front screen. Just going to start. Normally, when you push the enter button there, you get into the device list. So we can see the Freedom Won battery, charge controller, and the inverter. And settings. We want to go to settings. And I normally just start from the start. Make sure remote support is enabled. I normally turn the audible alarm off because that can be a real pain. If it, for some reason, decides to do a little alert and it audibly alarms all the time. So firmware updates, just quickly. I normally do leave it at check only so that it doesn't just automatically keep updating to the last version, because there could be issues, but normally they're very good, but sometimes there's issues with always updating. But check that you are on the latest version is a good idea. No newer version available, so that's good. So we can click up here. Now you've got the official release and you also have a beta release. Okay, beta release is for testing only. You should sign up to the beta testing group if you're going to use the beta testing, because there are some things that can really mess your lovely Victron experience up a lot if you don't if you use the beta and they've got something wrong. Obviously, it's the latest version and they put it out to the community for testing and comments, etc. So date and time. I'm going to assume that we're in Australia somewhere, but I don't know where this is in Australia. So I'm just going to say it's in, should we say Western Australia or Central? Who knows? Let's go to Eastern Standard Time. Aussie. Right, here we go. So we click back out of there and you can see at the top there it's changed the time. Remote console. Enable on VRM, which means we can access it remotely. And also on LAN, which means that anyone with a computer connected to the same network can actually see the remote console, can see their GX device and double click it and come into this remote console using a computer on the LAN. System setup. AC1 input is a generator. Now from memory, I think AC2 was a generator because it had a setting on it. So I'm actually going to change that to generator as well. Doesn't hurt in a Quattro situation to have both AC inputs as a generator, even though you may not be using one. Battery monitor is the Freedom Won, as you could see there. DVCC is going to be forced on. And here I can see that somebody's changed the charge limit. You don't need to worry about that because the battery itself will manage its own charge limit. You also don't need to worry about the managed battery voltage. Unless there's been a problem or there are problems and it's going over voltage for some unknown reason, then you may want to go and change this and set it down to the maximum that the battery is designed for. But this is not really a requirement. I'm actually going to leave that in there. If there has been no problem with overcharging voltage on the battery, then I would turn that off. But I'm going to leave it in there for now, just in case someone else has had problems with over voltage on the battery. Typically what would happen there is if you didn't see the over voltage happen, you would actually, the battery would protect itself probably somewhere around 56.5, 56.8, something like that, and it will just turn the breaker off. It actually turns the breaker off based on the highest cell voltage rather than, I think it does pack voltage as well. Not certain on that. Display and language. You can leave the display on the whole time if you want to. Sometimes that's handy so you can see it at a glance, or you can turn it off after a certain amount of no one touching it or going through the menus. The good thing about leaving it on permanently is that you can see it without having to go and push a button. So you can walk past it and you don't have to actually press a button to see what's going on. Quite nice. So you can set that to never if you want to, or you can set it to whatever timeout you want. I'm going to leave it at 10 minutes. The only thing I would say that is if you're in a shed that insects can come into, then make it timeout so that the insects aren't attracted to the display light. VRM online portal. You want to enable it. If there is a problem on the site, then I select 1 minute intervals, and often I leave it at that. But if you've got a limited data rate, or you just don't want to be scrolling through that amount of data, then you can set it at 15-minute intervals. Allow two-way communication so that you can get full access, such as firmware updates, remote software updates into the inverter, etc. I also often reboot the device when there's no contact to the VRM. Basically, sometimes some internet routers will kick off certain Ethernet ports if they don't have full duplex or they've been quiet for a while. They can just drop them, or in some cases where there's so much traffic on another one, they'll drop the low traffic ones off, and then they don't exactly try and put the highest quality hardware into the cheapest Ethernet routers that you can buy on the market, and most standard internet providers use the cheapest internet routers that they can possibly get away with. So what this means is when it loses contact to the VRM, the CCGX or whatever GX it is, that's the Victron gateway, that will reboot. And then in the reboot process, it will normally reconnect to an Ethernet router or Wi-Fi, either one. You can put a USB thumb drive or a micro SD card into the GX device, and then when it is offline, it will store a lot more information. Typically, when these things go offline, they'll only store maybe half a day or a day's information. ESS, this is for on-grid systems, and you have to have an ESS assistant loaded into the inverter. But in this case, it's off-grid. So did I say off-grid or on-grid? I meant on-grid. In this case, it's off-grid, this particular site. So we're not going to have an ESS assistant. And you certainly don't want to add an ESS assistant in an off-grid situation because it will not use the generator properly. Energy meters. Well, there's no energy meters on the site. Typically, an energy meter can be used for looking after the grid or for monitoring a PV solar inverter or just a general AC load. And there we go, PV inverters. Some PV inverters can be picked up across the network, such as the Fronius snap inverters and the Fronius Gen 24s, for example, can be picked up across the local area network and will show their data and production here. We've got none of those on this site. Ethernet just gives you information about the Ethernet port. Are you connected? Yes, we are. What is the IP address, etc. And then the next one down is Wi-Fi. It gives you information about the Wi-Fi network. This is a color control GX, which actually has no Wi-Fi adapter in it, so you need to buy a USB adapter to be able to hook this one up to the Wi-Fi. GSM modem, not applicable. GPS, not applicable unless you're on a boat or an RV. Generator start stop. If you've got an auto start generator, you want to actually go down to relay first, and you select the function of the relay. In this case, it says alarm relay. If we select it to generator start stop, then what will happen is when we go back up to the generator start stop, we end up seeing a whole lot of parameters. And we can go, yes, we want auto start functionality. And when we select auto start functionality, we can then select settings and conditions. And we can go, I want to start the generator based on battery state of charge or battery current or voltage or AC load or anything, almost anything. You can select a periodic run once a week or once a month, but we're not going to actually do that. So we're going to go back here and just disable auto start functionality. We don't want the system to be hoping that it can start a generator and it doesn't. Could cause an alarm or confusion. So just turn that off. Services. This has already been done, obviously. So we've got VE CAN port. This is what we use on the color control GX. It's called a VE CAN port. And on some other GX devices as well. And we set this to CAN bus BMS 500 kps. Okay. So you don't want to use any of these other ones because otherwise it won't talk to the Freedom Won battery. And that, oh, you can also tell there, which is quite handy actually. Tell what's going on in the network. So are we sending and receiving data? And you can see there, yes, we are, and we've got no errors, no dropped packets. So we're doing well. The bus is nice and happy. Okay, so that's good. So now I'm going to go back to one more thing. When you program up the Quattro or the multi-plus inverter through VRM, you have one setting on the AC input that says overridden by remote, and that is this current limit here. You need to override it. You need to set it to overruled by remote. That's it there. Otherwise, you can't change this. So I'm clicking on it and I can't change it because it's not allowed to be overruled by the remote. Normally, I would select that it can be overruled by the remote, but in this case, it can't. So that is our lesson for today. I will see you all next time. Cool. Bye.